What if I told you that crocodilians make amazing pet reptiles even for beginners? Well, I wouldn't say that, but I would tell you to get these ones instead. Now, obviously, crocodilians are not for beginner keepers, and some species shouldn't be kept by anybody that doesn't have a facility or zoo or something like that. Don't get a Nile crocodile and keep it in your basement. It's probably a bad idea. However, if you want something that looks crocodilian-esque, but isn't a crocodile or an alligator or whatever, you can definitely get those, and I've got 5 that fit the bill. So let's start it off with number 5. And that is a Chinese crocodile lizard, a Shinisaurus. Now keep in mind, these are very rare, they're difficult to find, and they're very endangered in the wild. And on this list, you're gonna see there's gonna be quite a few endangered species, and I get flack about promoting these species a lot. But here's why. Any of these species on the list get captive bred. Don't take them in, especially if it's illegal to. For example, Shinisaurus has a CITES distinction that means they can't be used in international trade. So you can't take them from the wild and then ship them over to the US or the UK or whatever, or Canada anymore. So I am not saying poach these things. All of these animals are to be gotten from captive breeding stock and therefore do not affect the wild population at all. All right, let's move on. These are a very reclusive and secretive animal, and if you keep them, likely the only time you're going to see them, if you set them up correctly, is at feeding time. My friend Diane at Reptiliatus has a few of these. He has them in this amazing paludarium enclosure, which is how you're gonna have to keep them, because they're not very big, 16 inches, something like that. The males are a bit bigger than the females, but they're gonna be in the water most of the time. Almost all of the time, you're gonna find them inside of water. This is important to note because they're gonna like to climb a bit too, and they do need a land area. They're not fully aquatic, but in the wild, you're gonna find them in shallow areas of water. So you wanna recreate that where you keep them. Now, why they're on this list is obvious. I mean, look at them. They have this crocodilian-like look to them. The scales on their back look very much like what you'd see on some sort of crocodilian, almost like an alligator or a crocodile. Now, these are ambush carnivores, which means in captivity, you're going to feed them mostly insects, and they're gonna wait there until it's ready for them to attack. Now, what I've noticed from watching my friend at Reptiliatus, Diane's channel, is that they will often come out to you, the keeper, in order to find food if they know that it's feeding time. So if you train them correctly, you can do that, and it'll be much more rewarding for you too, because, well, you're gonna see them a lot more often. And if you're interested in breeding and helping bolster the captive population, which I think that we should do, they're able to have up to 12 babies at a time, and they are live bearers, which means no eggs to incubate. Number 4, the Mexican alligator lizard. These Abronia are really cool species. This is a species you're gonna find in parts of Mexico. They like high elevations and cloud forests, places like that. And what I love about them is because they're so beautiful and so unique looking, and they like to hang out in a place that's so beautiful and so unique. The cloud forest is one of those most amazing places on Earth. The footage you're seeing here I took in Costa Rica, which is not in Mexico, obviously, but similar cloud forests. You're gonna find tons and tons of unique plants there, like bromeliads. So if you want a really cool lizard that's absolutely beautiful, gorgeous, stunning, and you want it to have an enclosure that's not only accurate to where you'd find them in the wild, but just as beautiful as the species, get yourself an Abronia with a bunch of bromeliads. Now again, this is an endangered species, and make sure that you get one from a captive source. They're also not cheap. Both of these aren't cheap, but we'll get into something more affordable down the list. These guys look like they have every single scale painted by an artist, unique to each other. These scales look like they're their own masterpiece, all in a cluster on one animal. I've never seen anything like it. I could look up close at pictures like this all day long. Now, keep in mind, if you do get one, they are pretty easy to take care of, but they like cooler temperatures, they like humidity, quite a bit of humidity, and they are insectivores, so they're gonna eat a lot of bugs. And although they're not big, about 4 inches from snout to vent, which is basically the tip of their nose all the way until their butthole, basically, they have a really long prehensile tail. And that tail is gonna help them up in the trees because, again, they're arboreal. you're not going to find them on the ground, so give them a vertical enclosure. And just like the entry before it, the Shinisaurus, the Abronia also gives birth to 1 to 12 babies. They're also live bearers. Oh, quickly before we move on, I want to give you a bunch of free stuff. If you want to win this giant prize pack, all you have to do the free way, if you subscribe to Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and on this video, comment prize pack with a random 3-digit number. I'm gonna pick it out of a hat on August 2nd, and you win a giant prize pack. Completely free to enter. Or if you want better odds, join the Patreon, and again, we'll do a second draw on Patreon, and your chances right now are 1 in 350, so much better odds. Number 3, let's bump up the difficulty, bring down the price, and also bring up the size. Caiman lizards. Now, caiman lizards are some of the coolest animals on the planet, reptile or not. They are basically a water tegu. You know what a tegu looks like? Well, these guys are from a similar range, have similar body structure, are somewhat related, and these guys are just different in that, well, they're a little bit harder to find. They're going to be one of those animals that is semi-aquatic, but also likes to be above the water on low-hanging branches. So housing one is actually really difficult. When you find these guys in parts of their native range in South America, they're going to be always near water. You want an area for it to swim because it will swim very much like a crocodile or an alligator. I mean, it's called a caiman lizard. Look at the scales on this thing. It looks so crocodilian-esque, even though it's not. But also, even with the large water source, you're gonna want to have branches overhanging it, a place for it to go. Very similar in some ways to something like a sailfin dragon, which again is why I put them as an intermediate lizard. Another really cool one that won't be on this list. If we do a lizards that look like dinosaurs list, I'll put them on there. Let me know in the comments section below if you want to see something like that. But here's the kicker. It's not a small enclosure because it's not a small lizard. These are 4-foot-long animals. These are really big lizards, some males attaining lengths of up to 5 feet. So you need a really big enclosure. Problem is, it's gonna take up tons and tons of your house. Not only that, but their diet is very unique. In the wild, they're gonna eat things that are hard-shelled. Crabs, mollusks, and especially snails. Love to climb, love to swim, and have a weird diet. And as you can see here, this one is just eating a whole bunch of snails that are kind of ground up. So it's not impossible to take care of them, but they will definitely take a lot of your resources in terms of how much space it takes up. It takes a lot of real estate to house one of these things, but they're very rewarding, and a lot of the times they are going to be great captives. They do have jaws that could hurt you if they really tried, but most of the time they're pretty placid, and they have a weird jaw and weird teeth that's made for crushing things like shells. Number 2, probably the smallest on the list, and the coolest one, crocodile skinks. They're actually not the smallest on the list, but they're definitely, I think, probably the best one on the list, the most reasonable for most people. The only barrier to entry is you'd want one that is captive bred. I highly recommend not getting one that's wild caught. I bought a captive bred one and a wild caught one at the same time. The wild caught one died very quickly. Same thing, again, my friend Diane at Reptiliatus, he is the guy in Canada for this species, and he said similar things about how it's just easier and they're more hardy if they're captive bred. So, buy one captive bred, but they look very crocodilian. I mean, look at their heads. They have this weird shield look to their heads. Absolutely fantastic. Those raised back scales, unbelievably cool looking. And they have those red eyes. These animals are found in parts of Papua and surrounding areas, so they have a unique range, even found in the Solomon Islands. And the interesting thing too is they're almost never going to be found during the day in your enclosure. Mine hides under the same piece of cork every day, all day, only comes out at night to hunt bugs and things like that. That's what they eat. I mean, really, that's all mine eats is bugs, crickets, and roaches and stuff. But something to mention about them is even though they are small and kind of delicate looking, they do move pretty quickly. What's interesting is when I lift up the cork and I kind of poke him, he looks like he's dead all the time and he'll barely move. And then just with one burst of fury, boom, he is gone. I love mine. I wanted to breed these guys. I think that project's been put on the back burner, but I highly recommend them if you're looking for a lizard that's not that difficult to care for. They do like water, they like moisture, they don't like the temperatures to be too high, but they're small and they don't take up a lot of room in your house. And if you want a small lizard, that's something your friend probably doesn't have, something super unique that's gonna get a lot of clicks and likes and things like that on Instagram and Facebook. And more importantly, it's gonna weasel a little spot in your heart and you're just gonna love the heck out of this thing. You gotta get yourself a crocodile skink. Number 1 on the list, crocodile geckos. Now, I don't think these are the best on the list, but they look so unique, they're really easy to find, and they're really inexpensive. And it's one of those things too where you can put these in bigger enclosures. Like, let's suppose you're one of those people that like to have giant enclosures like the one at the back here that are 1,500 gallons, like half the size of a bedroom. Literally, that's half the size of the bedroom that I had when I was a kid. And you want to have it with other animals, you can do that. I mean, don't overstock a tank and do your research. Don't throw a bunch of animals into a box. Like, come on now. But if you want an ecosystem, these are a perfect gecko for that. They're around 5-ish, 6 inches long snout to vent. They're not super aggressive, but they are flighty. So if you want an animal for handling, this is definitely not it. But if you want a display animal that, although crepuscular, is oftentimes out during the day, just stuck to a wall or a plant or a fake tree branch or whatever you have going on in the enclosure, these are really cool ones. And they're insectivores, they're easy to keep. The husbandry is really easy. Overall, I think crocodile geckos get a little bit less love than they should. It's one of those animals that if I ever had available or found available to me, I would definitely get one because I think they're super interesting. So there you go. Let me know in the comments section below what next week's video should be about. I get all the video ideas from there. Thank you for hitting like and subscribe. It really does help the channel and means the world to me. It's why I can keep making videos like this. And Patreon, a special thanks to you. You guys get videos early, discounts on merch, extra entries into the free stuff draw that I'm doing on August 2nd, all that and more for as little as $1 a month. And that's it. I do videos Mondays and Thursdays, so I'll see you in the next one.